Today we are talking about new UFO or UAP footage released, as well as some images as well, and especially, most importantly, these two congressmen that claim that aliens could be extra-dimensional angels. So we're going to be taking a look at some of this footage. We're going to be taking a look at some of these imageries, some of the imagery, and some of the interviews as well with different individuals involved and congressmen. It's going to be really good. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm very surprised that more people aren't talking about this. So we're going to be taking a look at this, of course, through the lens of logic and reason, and answering the questions, like, what is this footage? Is it real? Is it a hoax? Do these beings actually exist? Do they not exist? What does it mean for a being to be extra dimensional? What does it mean for them to be an extra dimensional angel? What is all that? We're going to be taking a look at all of that right now. It's going to be really good. There's a lot to unpack. Now, before I begin, just please make sure that you like and subscribe. Remember, this channel is about bringing hidden knowledge to the public, but not for just entertainment value, to raise consciousness and transform the world. So make sure that you like and subscribe. It helps out a lot to spread information around. Also, if you enjoy my work, hey, consider supporting on Patreon. It's the best way to help me out and help this channel grow. And you'll get access to all of our members only videos. There's a new members only video every single week. In fact, we're having a members only video right after this one called Our Future. Will it be a dystopian nightmare or a utopian dream? As we take a look at the development of technology, transhumanism, and AI, etc. So if you want to be a part of that, if you want to help out and get access to all of our members only videos, then support on any tier on Patreon. It's patreon.com/MorgueOfficial, or tier 2 or higher right here on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video. Also, as always, watch out for scammers. There's scammers in the comments pretending to be me, saying to join my WhatsApp, join my Telegram. Don't fall for it. It's a bunch of BS. It's not me. Also, there are people and groups out there who don't like what I'm doing and don't like what we're doing and are spreading a lot of disinformation and misinformation about me and our group and what we do. And as always, it's BS. Don't fall for it. Use logic and reason, and use your head. All right, my friends, here we go. Let us begin. We're taking a look at these new UFO, new UAP footage. Now, before we get started, I know that there's a lot of people who probably aren't familiar with actually the what happened with the congressional hearing regarding UFOs and UAPs, where there was a whistleblower and different officers talking about their knowledge of UAPs and UFOs, etc. So before we take a look at some of this footage, and most importantly, these congressmen's comments about them being extra dimensional angels and how that ties into the nature of reality, we're going to do just a very quick recap of the congressional hearing. It's just a few minutes here for those who might not be familiar.
We begin with that historic UFO hearing on Capitol Hill today. As we just said, the bipartisan push for transparency, certainly decades in the making. The nation watched gripping testimony of UAPs, accusations of a government cover-up, calls for action, and demands for greater transparency on this issue. What are these unidentified objects? Where did they come from? And are we alone? Take a listen. Here are some of the key highlights from that hearing.
Finally, I'd like to thank these three brave witnesses here. They took an oath. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States.
Now, real quick here, let me bring up, so I am live while doing this, so I want to bring up the live chat so I can see what you guys are doing. So let me have that in the corner. Now, real quick, I want you to notice right behind David Grush. So David Grush is the man right in the middle. Right in the center is David Grush. And if you look right behind him, on his left, or your right, if you're facing the screen, if you look right behind him, that you'll see a man with wearing like a greenish shirt, and he has a goatee, mustache and goatee, greenish shirt in the background. That individual is going to be very important. We're going to be talking about this individual because he plays a key part in all this. So I just want you to take note of this individual behind David Grush at the congressional hearing. I think a lot of people might have overlooked him, but he plays a very important part in all this. So just keep that in mind.
And dadgummit, they're doing it. And we owe them a debt of gratitude.
I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security.
And just to be clear, for those who might be new, UAP is the same thing as UFO. So whenever anyone's saying UAP, they're referring to a UFO, unidentified flying object for UFO, and was it unidentified anomalous object, I believe, for UAP.
It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust.
So we have this former Navy pilot here talking about how has all these different reports from individuals that have encountered UAPs, UFOs, and the amount of secrecy around all of this creates mistrust, and of course there's no transparency here. So their whole idea is that they want this to be looked at and taken seriously because it's being swept under the rug and hidden intentionally.
In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers, and I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was...
Let me just replay that again in case you missed it, because that's very important. Notice how this individual describing what it looked like. A black cube inside of a sphere. A dark black cube inside of a sphere. Note the geometry of these things. That's going to be important. So I'll just replay that real quick so you can hear that.
Visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans.
I see that Laura said that, oh, this is the same thing that he said at the congressional hearing last year. This is the congressional hearing from last year. I'm just playing this short clip for people who may not have known about it. So there's only 3 minutes left here on this recap. This is just a recap for people who are not familiar with the congressional hearing that occurred. So this is the clip from last year. We're going to get into the new clips real soon.
With decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency.
The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet, and the controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All four of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping-pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the tic-tac, or we consumed 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cap point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute." You can calculate the speed. We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to him. And they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar.
All right, so they're talking about an object that was jamming their radar, and they call a tic-tac. All right, so that if you're familiar with this is just a review. The one final thing that I want to look at for the review is, just for those who don't know and haven't seen it yet, that particular tic-tac video. That video of that UFO or UAP. Again, this is not the new one yet, but for those who haven't seen it, what that individual was just describing about encountering this tic-tac-like object here is the video from that. It gets better. Just wait till they zoom in on it.
Dude, that is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating. Check 061 Tango Project, over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
All right, so that's the video that they were talking about. Now, with that recap done, let's take a look at some new updates. So now we're going to hear about this particular congressman discussing This is new. This was not part of the congressional hearing that we heard about last year. This came out. When did this come out? This came out about, well, it came out 6 months ago. So it's not, super new, but I think it's something that a lot of people have not seen. So let's take a look at this. This is just 1 minute long here.
Intelligence Committee held a hearing on UAPs. They brought in some Pentagon bureaucrats who only had 2 answers to the questions they were asked. I don't know, or that's classified. This hearing is going to be different. We're going to have witnesses who can speak frankly to the public about their experiences. We've had a heck of a lot of pushback about this hearing. We've had members of Congress who fought us. We've had members of the intelligence community and also the Pentagon.
Now, I'm actually not sure if this particular video came out before or after the hearing. I'm not sure. But still, what he has to say is important, and I want to have that ground what we're talking about.
Even NASA backed out on us. There are a lot of people who don't want this to come to light. I've even tried to introduce an amendment to the Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Bill, and all that would do would require the Federal Aviation Administration to report UAP sightings by commercial pilots to Congress. I was told the intelligence community shut it down. This is ridiculous, folks. They do exist or they don't exist. They keep telling us they don't exist, but they block every opportunity for us to get a hold of the information to prove that they do exist. And we're going to get to the bottom of it, dadgummit, whatever the truth may be. We're done with the cover-up. We're not going to bring you in a saucer or a little green man. That's not what it's going to be about. And I know y'all, every time you play this interview with one of us, you play the theme from X-Files. I get it. But the reality is the American public deserves to know.
So I think that may have come out before the congressional hearing when they were setting it up. But either way, the reason why that doesn't matter, the reason why I wanted to play that is because what I'm trying to get across here, for those who are maybe new to this, the reason why we're taking a look at this is because it's something, this isn't just some people with tinfoil hats on in a basement discussing this sort of thing. This is, high level, it's just at high levels in the government being taken very, very seriously. And this is why we want to take a look at this through logic and reason, examine it, and see what the possibilities could be. So we're now going to take a look at something called the jellyfish UAP video. So this is a new video that was recently released, not the Tic Tac video that we saw. This is a new one called the jellyfish video. So let's play this and you can see for yourself.
Okay, I know. This is a show about true crime and mystery, but tonight I've got a story that's not so much true crime, but it blows the lid off mystery. A video allegedly taken at a U.S. military base in Iraq in 2018, just released by a journalist named Jeremy Corbell, who claims that it was buried by the intelligence community. Look at this. He calls this thing, whatever craft it is, jellyfish. You can see why, because it floats with like dangling appendages. The footage was shot at night, and I'm quoting that they used thermographic forward-looking infrared imagery. But interestingly, the object could not be seen with regular night vision gear. And some of the troops who were at the base weren't even aware it was up there. Others were told to hunt it down. And the coolest part of it all is that it switches colors. It goes from this dark to like almost invisible and see-through and white. As it glides, indicating that should be a temperature change, more than likely, from hot to cold to hot to cold. And then it just disappears into a body of water for 17 straight minutes until it reemerges and shoots off into the sky at a rate of speed that was so high it couldn't be documented with the technology we actually have here on Earth. What? So Corbell claims that the jellyfish, a similar kind of thing just like this, was seen at a nuclear facility too, moving between silos and shooting off at a 45-degree angle. And he shared this footage on social media. You should know that NewsNation has not independently verified the authenticity of either of these videos, and the Pentagon has not confirmed or even commented on them. So that's why I called Nick Pope. Spent his career investigating UFOs for the UK.
Okay, so that particular video, I believe they said, was released by Jeremy Corbell, who I'm pretty sure that is the name of the individual who I mentioned earlier that was sitting behind David Grush. That guy said, hey, remember him? He's, pay attention to him in the green with the beard and everything. We're going to be seeing him again. It's not this guy. It's not the guy that's on screen right now. It's a different guy, but we're going to be seeing that guy I mentioned again. Now, so, okay, this is very interesting. We're going to hear what this person has to say in a minute. But so, okay, the footage is very interesting, and it's pretty darn clear as far as UFO or UAP footage goes. So we have to be, there's a lot of people who have taken a look at this footage and has no idea what it is. I think the Pentagon said, what did they say? I don't know. It was basically a no comment sort of thing. They didn't answer if they knew what it was or didn't know what it was. But if they knew what it was, or if it was something easily explainable, you'd think that they would just say what it is. But we want to, this is very interesting. We always want to remain skeptical as well. From some of the research I did, I think someone calculated the speed that was going at, and it's actually not going very fast. I'm pretty sure the speed that was calculated by another channel was 10 miles per hour. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's the speed that they calculated. So it's not going really fast. It's going kind of slow. So there is the possibility that it could be something very simple, like a bunch of balloons clumped together, moving in a certain way, or something of that nature. It's not necessarily 100% that this is bona fide, advanced alien technology or anything like that, but it is very interesting, and it is something that we should take a look at and we should examine, especially with everything going on and a lot of information being released. I think that it's interesting. To me, it looked like, you guys ever watch Star Wars? What are those Imperial droids called? Those Imperial droids that interrogate people? I forget what they're called. They remind me of that. I think Jan said it reminded them of a Zerg Overlord. If you ever played StarCraft, I think, yeah, it does look a lot like a Zerg Overlord or one of those Imperial drones. But anyway, let's see what this individual has to say. So Laura says a drone, a balloon, or a jetpack can't go as fast as that did if it ascended from the water as fast as it did. Yeah, that thing where she said it ascended from the water really fast. I don't know if she was referring to the video that played right after that where it was moving fast. I'm not sure. I tried to find, it was kind of hard to find this footage that wasn't played on like some kind of news station where it was edited or cut off. I want to find it in its entirety, where it's just the footage itself all the way from the beginning to the end without any kind of editing or whatever. But anyway, let's see what this individual has to say regarding this.
Okay, Ministry of Defense, and he's
the
just
probe
great
droid,
at this stuff. Yeah. So, first of all, Nick, what do you make of this whole temperature, color change, and then also this transmedium capabilities of going in and out of the water and the air?
Well, the change in color, which normally could represent a temperature change, may be an artifact of the camera and the system. We don't know yet what this is. There are so many pieces of the puzzle that have yet to be confirmed. This is very early days. So I don't want to say about the temperature change. And again, with the transmedium travel, so far, the only bit of this video that I've seen is the bit that you're showing now. I have yet to see the part where it apparently goes into the water and comes out. But
yeah, see exactly what he just said. He's saying he's only seen bits and pieces of it. He hasn't seen the part where it apparently goes in the water and comes out. I haven't seen that either. And that's exactly, I think that would help a lot, because this particular footage is very interesting, but it is moving very slow. If we could see the part that he's talking about where it apparently goes in the water or comes out of the water at very high speeds, that would be interesting. I haven't seen that. He says he hasn't seen that. So that's a little weird. That's a little suspicious. I don't know, but let's continue here.
If that is what people are saying it is, that is certainly something to watch. And it's one of these so-called 5 observables, this apparent ability to move seamlessly between water and air that we hear about. And that is noteworthy for sure, if it's verified.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that. And first of all, we don't have the video yet of the water dive, but the part about being verified, how do you vet this stuff? How does one go?
See, to me, it does look kind of possibly like, oh, it could be a person with a jetpack type thing on. But as far as I know, I'm not an expert in jetpack technology. The movement of this thing is so smooth. I wouldn't think that the technology that we have regarding that could create something with such smooth movement. But again, I'm no expert, but it is interesting, something to think about.
About vetting this kind of video?
Well, I think the first thing is obviously to ask the Department of Defense, and I think News Nation have an inquiry in. I actually reached out to Public Affairs myself earlier, and they said they would get back to me on that. So I think they're burning the midnight oil at the Pentagon tonight. Look, Jeremy Corbell does have a proven track record of bringing forward footage and still photographs that do turn out to be genuine.
So Jeremy Corbell, again, that's the individual who we saw sitting behind David Grush, the one who released this video. And we're going to be hearing from him, and it's really interesting. But there's a lot more that we need to talk about here regarding the holographic principle and extra-dimensional beings, and the congressman saying that these could be extra-dimensional angels, what this has to do with all that. But let's continue with what this individual is saying, and then we'll hear from Jeremy Corbell.
So I'm betting that this is going to be the real deal. But as I say, there are still pieces of the puzzle we don't have. And I think this is going to be a test. Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who was the director of the Pentagon's Arrow unit, stepped down at the end of last year. His deputy, Timothy Phillips, is in place. This is a big test for him. How's he going to respond to this? I think we want this. Congress wants information about this sort of thing, not from independent filmmakers, but from the Pentagon.
Yeah, I agree. And I can't wait to have you back when you get the answers that you're getting, because I think we're all racing to get the same answers. So, Nick, keep your phone handy. I'm going to call you back. Thanks for this tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
Okay, so that was that individual. Now let's go over, is this? Oh, okay. So before we hear from Jeremy Corbell, all right, let's take a look. I just wanted to find, because that video was very edited, right? This was the best video that I could find of the jellyfish UAP footage without any editing. So let's take a look at this. This is the best I could find. If anyone knows a better version of it that includes that part about it apparently going in the water and coming out, let me know. I'd be interested. Footage of it descending or ascending into the water. It's very, very fishy that people keep mentioning that, but I haven't. Where is that part? I don't know. That's weird. So that would clear up a lot of, I think that would help rule out some possibilities of what this could be. But now, okay, let's listen. All right. So now we're going to see this individual here. This is the individual I was telling you about. Like I said, if you look behind David Grush, you can see him sitting there, and let's hear what he has to say, because he is the one who released this footage.
Corbell himself. He released the jellyfish video to the world, and some of his previous discoveries have led to congressional hearings. He had a front row seat for David Grush's testimony in July, and you can see right there to the right in the back in the green shirt, there he is. And you can see all of this for yourself in TMZ Presents UFO Revolution on Tubi. Take a look.
You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft. You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen the spacecraft?
What I personally witnessed myself is very disturbing.
Very traumatic.
It has been since the inception of the UFO problem. Nothing to see here. All of that has changed.
A multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
Jeremy is also the co-host of the podcast Weaponize. He's with me live. I'm really appreciative to talk to you tonight, particularly because of today. What are your reactions to what we didn't learn today?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say it's George Knapp, my mentor in journalism, and also myself, and we obtain and we release videos if it doesn't compromise national security, and the jellyfish is one of them. Today was a historic day. So it was a classified briefing in a secret compartmentalized room. They call it a skiff. It was a huge day. I've actually heard what went on in that skiff. You know, being an investigative journalist, I have eyes and ears everywhere, you know, which people hate, but it's true. There were about 15 members that were there. It was unified. It was across the aisle. The biggest takeaway that I got was that when I was told what was discussed in there, it was not just, oh yeah, we validated David Grush is an intelligence officer. I asked specifically, there was validation of his specific claims about UFOs, when it came to his public discussion, what he did in Congress, which I helped set up, that public congressional hearing. So that was big news. I think the biggest takeaway, Ashley, and thank you for covering this, but you're going to cover it more, because the biggest takeaway, we're going to have more hearings on UFOs, and we're going to crack this open.
So this guy is a big player here. He was the one who helped. According to him, he helped set up the hearing. He has apparently a lot of information, a lot of connections. I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know if he's legit or not, but he seems like he's able to obtain footage and set things up. So this individual is a key figure. So I think that a lot of this will hinge on his credibility. And it's interesting that he's talking about this more recent discussion, classified discussion that they had in a skiff. I don't know if it's technically considered classified or what, but it's in this private discussion in a skiff where they were verifying what David Grush, the whistleblower, had to say, according to him. So let's continue.
And this business that Representative Luna said afterwards that kind of made me shudder, that people have been hurt. They've been hurt trying to keep things secret, and they've been hurt trying to make them public. Do you have any wisdom or intelligence on that, Jeremy?
Yeah, of course. I know specifically what's being referenced there. And unfortunately, it is a reality that this information about UFOs, UAPs, same thing, it's regarded as higher than weapons of mass destruction. And there's a reason for that. So there has been pressure put on, not just from the public, not smash pieces in the media, but actual pressure put on by private corporations and also certain agencies or factions of agencies. And it is unfortunate. And I think that you can hear those details. I think those details will come out. But let's focus on the important part. The important part is people have courage. David Grush gave people courage. And this is important because it's allowing other people to come forward. People come to me and George Knapp and they leak information. And that's great. As journalists, we can absorb that and try to see if it's valuable to put out. But having somebody stand up there under oath in front of Congress and say, we've been reverse engineering UFOs. They represent non-human intelligence, not just craft, but biologics, which means bodies. And the fact this was said in a public realm, and now Congress, and they've been seeking answers, are starting to understand the gravity and the weight that this is true. I mean, it's really a historic moment. I think that's going to sink into people in a little while.
See, I think the thing about this, like where I'm at with this, is that, we're going to talk about the possibility of what this could be, the idea of extradimensional angels and the holographic principle. We're going to talk all about that. But for me, where I'm at with this is there's not enough information released for me to be able to say one way or another. I don't know the credibility of the individuals putting this information out. However, regardless of what it is, it does seem like there is something important going on. Whether it's actually foreign agents or aliens or extradimensional beings. I'm not saying any of that. I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. But it does seem like, regardless, at the very least, something important is going on, because there wouldn't be all this secrecy about it. There wouldn't be all of these hushed projects about it. There would be nothing wrong with being clear and open about it. So, I don't know if I particularly trust some of these individuals involved. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know. But there is something going on here.
Is it coincidental that it is this week that the jellyfish video ended up being released for all of us to see, and then there's this hearing? And as an addendum to that, do you think that particular video was discussed today?
All I can say is that being a strategist, what's really important is that we can make a lot of noise and get things into public consciousness when it will have most effect. Now, this meeting...
See, this guy is clearly very smart. He's highly intelligent. He knows how to get ideas out there. You see how he's talking about shifting consciousness in a certain way? It's kind of like what we talk about. What he's trying to do is shift consciousness in a certain way. He wants to get this. His idea is to make a lot of noise, draw a lot of attention, get people to start thinking about this stuff, which it shows a very high level of intelligence. This person is highly intelligent. He knows that it's important to cause a shift in consciousness. Whether he is credible or not, whether he is trustworthy or not, I don't know. I don't know anything about him, but he is smart. And just because you're smart doesn't mean you're a good person. Maybe he is. I don't know one way or another, but he's a smart person for sure. And something is going on. You know, these are all the little bits of the puzzle we can put together.
He has been on the books for a while. George Knapp and I have been sitting on this footage for about 3.5 years. We've been trying to figure out the best way to get it out if we can verify it from firsthand witnesses, which we sure did. So as we unfold this story, it kind
Jan says some of these fairly intelligent people had experiences that they are doing their best to be honest about under difficult circumstances. Yeah, I agree. I think this particular situation is a very fine line that we have to walk. We have to walk a very fine line of not automatically buying into, oh yeah, these are definitely extra-dimensional beings. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Or whatever. And at the same time, not dismissing it as, oh, that's just a hoax. That's just a bunch of balloons. These people are crazy. One way or either of the extremes are not the right way to go about this, in my opinion. And so I do think that there is something going on here, and it's something that we should take seriously and something that we should look at. And I will be talking about the holographic principle and extra-dimensional entities and things like that in a moment. But it's important to keep all this in mind, because it's a very unique situation for sure.
Kind of seems like perfect timing today, right?
It sure did. One quick question about the source for David Grush. It seems from some reporting that the source is Air Force. Do you have any thoughts or any connections to either confirm or deny that?
The source for David Grush, what do you mean?
Oh, so this is important. I think I did see this interview at one point. He's going to clarify who David Grush is and the sources that David Grush has access to, which I think is really important. I don't think people realize at what a high level David Grush is at. So anyway, this is important. Let me just replay that so we can get it from that part.
It sure did. One quick question about the source for David Grush. It seems from some reporting that the source is Air Force. Do you have any thoughts or any?
So she's asking specifically about the sources, David Grush's sources. So David Grush is one of the main individuals at the hearing who is talking about, non-human biologics and spacecraft and all that. She's asking, what is his source? Where did David Grush get that information? Is it the Air Force? And this is what his response to that. His response to, where did Grush get this information?
Connections to either confirm or deny that?
The source for David Grush, what do you mean?
That the source who has been telling and giving information to David Grush as well is Air Force based as well. Do you know if there's a connection to the Air Force when it comes to David Grush's revelations?
I think there's a misunderstanding here. So let me break it down for your audience. So it's not one source for David Grush. David Grush was a career intelligence officer who was mandated by the UFO study group within our government to look at the black programs. He interviewed more than 40 people, and then he brought that information forward, gave it to the Inspector General of the intelligence community, and they then interviewed those 40 people plus. So that he doesn't have a source. David Grush has an army of people that came to him in his official capacity for our government to look into this, and he blew the whistle saying that we have spacecraft from somewhere else that represent non-human intelligence. I think it gets confused for people. It's not like somebody told something to David Grush, just one person. This is a guy who was tasked by our intelligence agencies to do this job. He did it, and he found out that there were secret programs being held back from Congress and from oversight. So he blew the whistle on that and came forward in that congressional hearing. I think the stories get mixed up, but now you know.
Well, and I was always under the impression that some of the most alarming material that he brought forward was actually brought forward to him from a source he couldn't allude to, but that some have suggested it had come to him from the Air Force. But I see there are a lot of sources that he was
Right, but what you're talking about there is he said when he was up there in the public setting, if you can get me a secure room and you can get the authority to hear what I have to say, I'll spill the beans. That's what he said. So they were fighting to get that environment.
Jeremy Corbell, I'm going to pencil you in for another visit.
So again, this is fascinating. It's the idea that David Grush is saying, I will tell you everything that I know if you can get me the proper clearance. From what I understand, I'm not an expert in this sort of thing, but from what I understand, David Grush is saying, hey, I will tell you guys everything. You just have to get me a private conference and get the permissions necessary for me to be able to do this. And I think that that's what they're working on trying to do, as far as I know, because I know David Grush keeps saying, like, hey, I have all this information. I can tell it to you guys. It just has to be a private setting. And a lot of people are like, what's going on? How come he hasn't said anything yet? And as far as I understand it, that is the issue. They're trying to get the proper permissions or authority to even have that conversation with him.
Is it? Because this story's not over. Like you said, more hearings ahead. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for...
Okay, so let's continue now over to the chandelier UAP, okay? We're going to hear from Jeremy Corbell again, and we're going to talk about the chandelier UAP. Then after that, we're going to talk about the holographic principle, extra-dimensional entities, and then the two congressmen that said that these could be extra-dimensional angels.
Investigative journalist and co-host of the Weaponized podcast, Jeremy Corbell, is the one who released that video. And today he dropped yet another image of a separate UFO sighting. It's being called the chandelier UFO because of its shape. A new documentary series hosted by Corbell shows the moment he speaks to an unidentified U.S. intelligence official about this puzzling image.
So what was the most impressive thing to you about this video, which the world has not seen yet?
The fact that it makes no sense. It is just the most bizarre structure with no purpose and with speed that has everyone across the intelligence community just asking questions and trying to figure out what this thing is. There is no wings. There's seemingly no place for anyone to sit on. It's just a bizarre shape.
All right, we have the picture of the chandelier UFO, as it's being called, but where's the video? Let's bring in investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell to find out. So what's the answer? Where's the video, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's part of the story, and I think I'm going to have to answer that at another time. But I will say this, is that there is more footage. That is a fact.
See, that's interesting, because we had that still image that he released, and he's saying that, oh, she asked, well, where's the video? And he says, oh, well, I'll have to answer that at another time. But there is more to it, he's saying. And I guess he's filming a documentary. That's where he was talking to the phone, someone on the phone. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of, this is very interesting footage on the one hand, and there are a lot of high level individuals in government that are taking this extremely seriously. It is interesting, though, that how there are some things that are a little fishy, like the part where they keep talking about it descending into the ocean and the jellyfish UAP. We haven't seen that. This idea about, oh, he can't talk about the footage yet. So, my question is it that he can't talk about the footage because of some, I don't know, government reason? Is it because he needs to do it in a specific way? Is there some reasoning behind it? Or is it because he's trying to promote his documentary? Like, oh, big mystery. You got to watch my documentary to find out. So, the thing that I think about when looking at this sort of thing is like, is this individual legit and wanting to bring out information? Or are they trying to make an interesting documentary and get viewers to watch? Or is it something in between? Is it this, or does the individual legitimately believe in these things and is just presenting them in a way that would be... See, remember how we talked about making it a lot of noise and getting it into public consciousness? Like, that's exactly what he's trying to do here. He's creating a documentary. He helped put together that congressional hearing, I guess. He's releasing these images and footage, and he's doing it in a very smart and very strategic way. So that's the thing to look at when you find highly intelligent individuals like this. I'm assuming he is. I don't know much about him. He seems to be, just based on the small bits and pieces that I've heard about his idea of getting people to understand certain things with regard to consciousness, he seems like a fairly intelligent individual. And so the question is he doing so because people that are highly intelligent can also be highly manipulative. So the question is he legit? Does he honestly believe what he's doing? Or is he more of a manipulative type of individual? I don't know, but those are the things that one has to ask themselves. And I don't know. I would, he seems like he legitimately believes this. That's just the impression that I get. But it is interesting. It's like when you're putting out a documentary, the question is, are you doing this just to make money, or are you doing this because you legitimately want to spread information? And if you make money as well, there's nothing wrong with that. You should be able to make money doing, providing a service or getting information. That's fine. But it's the intention behind it. Is it to actually spread information? And I don't know anything about this individual. It seems like he's genuine in his personal beliefs, but I don't know. This will be something interesting. I think we'll be seeing a lot more of him and hearing a lot more about this throughout the year.
So some people got to see portions of it within the intelligence community, and I'm so happy that people are coming forward. That's kind of the point of why you put some of this stuff out.
So someone says his eyes, I don't trust something about him. Yeah, he's obviously very highly produced. Like, you can see his camera quality is very good. He has a filter applied. He knows how to present himself very well. He knows how to get information. So there's a lot of metacognition going on. You can see there's a lot of metacognition. He's thinking about, how is he going to be perceived? How am I going to curate my image? How am I going to what kind of vibe do I want to get across to the audience? He's thought about all these things, and he's carefully crafted an image, and you can just tell by like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's just, it's one of those things where one has to question, is one doing this for a malevolent, a positive purpose? It's kind of like if it's like a knife. If you have a knife, you can use it to cut a loaf of bread and open a box. It's a very useful tool. You can also use it to hurt someone. So when someone is clearly at a seemingly fairly high level of metacognition, because you see other people don't care about this. Other people will just get on camera. It'll be all grainy and distorted audio, and they're not really concerned with how they're going to be perceived. And that's important for when it comes to consciousness, because this individual is projecting his image into people's minds and into their consciousness, and he's doing so in a very certain and specific way. So it's just something to keep in mind. He's an interesting individual for sure. He's interesting. Whether he has good intentions or not, I don't know. I think like I said, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of him. And he's obviously a key player, someone to keep an eye on, someone to consider.
Now, there is a bigger story to tell. The object did go into the water for 17 minutes, and then it did come out and shoot off at an extraordinary speed.
Wait, are you talking about the jellyfish UFO or the chandelier UFO?
Right. So let's separate the two for your audience.
Yeah.
So what we are calling the jellyfish UFO is a strange morphology. I mean,
you see even how he says, let's separate the two for your audience. And he said that again in a previous interview. He said, let's break this down for your audience. The only reason why I'm pointing this out is to show that this individual is clearly very conscious, at least with regard to metacognition and understanding. He's very aware of what he's doing, and he's very concerned to a very meticulous level about getting his ideas across to the public in a very specific way. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually great. That's fantastic. It's just, one has to be on the lookout too, because that can be used for manipulation. That's like when I talk to you guys about the occult, when it's like, oh, be careful when you get into the occult, because there are individuals who get into the occult and learn how to use advanced levels of metacognition, but they use it for manipulation. So they understand how to, project a certain image into people's mind. They understand how to get people to do what they want, but they don't do it in a positive way. They do it in a very manipulative way for their own personal power, for their own personal good. And so, that's why I'm like, always be careful when you get into esoterica and occultism, because there are people who are learning higher levels of thinking, but if they haven't properly integrated or developed their analog all so that they have the absolute perspective, they can start to be very manipulative, and that can get dangerous. So one always has to be very careful. So when I see an individual like this, I'm just like, oh, okay, clearly this person is smart. Clearly this person knows what they're doing. Are they doing it for the good of the collective and humanity, or do they have a more personal interest in it?
Looks like a jellyfish, and because it went in the water, we dubbed it that. Some people called it the spaghetti monster, and that's awesome. But the other one, the chandelier, it's because if you look at it from the bottom, it looks like a chandelier. They're two separate events, military filmed footage of designated UAP by our intelligence agencies. So I'm talking about the jellyfish UFO is the one that actually showed transmedium capability. It did go into the water for 17 minutes, did come up and shoot off at an extraordinary speed.
When you say these videos were made by the military, made by what kinds of cameras, on what kinds of equipment?
Yeah, it was actually called the MX-20 was the actual system, but we have surveillance platforms to protect bases. So this is the first time in history we are seeing a designated UAP, an unknown and unidentified, that it is moving into a restricted base. It is an incursion, in fact. So this is the first time you're seeing that. We've heard about this, how UFOs will come in, they'll turn on or shut down nuclear weapons in Russia and China. Well, this is the first time you're seeing footage of an incursion of a designated UAP by our intelligence.
So Isaac said the geometric pattern one is definitely hard to explain away. Yeah, do you mean the one that's the chandelier UFO that's on screen right now? Yeah, this is very interesting looking. And I think the determining factor here will be to see the actual video. I think we need to see the actual video to see how this thing moves, what it looks like as it moves, if it changes its orientation. As a still image, it's pretty interesting looking. Absolutely. Very interesting looking. I want to see the actual video. But to be able to decide one way or the other. But as far as still images go, yes, this one's a lot more interesting than the jellyfish or even the Tic Tac. This is probably the most interesting one that I've ever seen. But that could change if a video is never released. If they never release a video, that's super fishy. If they do release the video, it might turn out that, oh, that was just a certain angle for a split second. The rest of it's not very convincing. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and find out. Like I said, I think that 2024, there's going to be a lot of talk about this sort of thing. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things to look at. So let's continue here.
Intelligence agencies.
But when you say, when we say designated UAP, that it has been.
Yeah, so Philip said, interesting that the Pentagon simply said no comment on potentially leaked videos. Yes, I did hear about that. I don't remember the full quote, but it was like a paragraph. But yes, the gist of it was basically like, no comment. We're not going to say. And that is weird, because you'd think if it was just a clump of balloons or something, they would say something. So it could be something non-human, could be something extra-dimensional. There's also the possibility that it could be that maybe we're testing top secret weaponry or something, and the Pentagon is pissed off because they're showing videos of secret things that they're testing, and they don't want, foreign adversaries to see this. So there's a lot of different things that it could be. But regardless, something is happening. Something is going on.
Designated a UAP by our intelligence agencies. That doesn't mean it's alien life. It just means we don't know what it is, right?
Oh, correct. Yeah. We don't know what it is. It's unidentified, which is very dangerous. To have something that you don't know its capability or intent, that is a big deal. So UAPs in general, I don't even know where they're from, who's controlling them. But the fact that they can outpace, outmaneuver, and outperform anything we have, that is an issue.
Yeah, they're doing something that we don't have the technology to do, and we have supposedly the most sophisticated military on Earth right now.
It's a problem.
Okay. The intelligence analyst that...
Yeah, so Jader says, good point on the angle of the chandelier. Based on the shadows, this was taken at a very specific angle, maybe even a convenient angle. That's yes. So that's immediately what I think. When I see this chandelier image, it's very cool, very interesting, very intriguing. But yeah, I want to know, maybe we see the video and the whole thing looks ridiculous, and just for a split second, it turns a certain way and makes an interesting shape. But it's just, or it could be something phenomenal, could be something amazing, could be something interesting. It's weird that he hasn't released the footage, or hasn't even said why he hasn't released the footage. But there's also a documentary he's making around it. See, there's a lot of weirdness going on around here. It's like, are you just trying to promote your documentary, or is there an actual reason you can't release it? Is this legit? Yeah. So a lot of, and I see someone else saying, oh, Jeremy Corbell has done a lot of research. He's legit. And he very well could be. I don't know. I don't know much about this individual. I'm just going off of what I'm seeing here with you guys right now. So it's something to take note of.
You interviewed in the documentary about the chandelier video said that UFO, quote, made no sense. What was he talking about, and what else is unusual about that one?
Real quick, Philip says, I think he said that he has to get certain permissions or make sure he's not breaking the law before releasing leaked military videos. And that is definitely legit. If that's true, that's a very good reason. I just know at the beginning of this interview, she said, "Where's the video?" And the only thing he said was, "That's something I'll have to talk about at another time." So, if it was just a matter of, oh, I need to get the right permissions, why didn't he just say that? I don't know. Just all these different things are things we want to analyze and keep in mind.
Right. So to answer your first question, why is it an image and not a video? Because as a journalist, I can obtain and release certain things that do not have a problem with national security. It doesn't jeopardize our national security. So sometimes when I obtain things, I can create and put out a still image from a video. But there are sensitive things about releasing military film footage, especially incursions in military bases. So the chandelier one, you're seeing an image like the Mosul orb, which is another military filmed UAP that I put out with George Knapp, my mentor in journalism, right? So this is just another image. Now, I hope the full video of the chandelier UAP does come out. We're even having,
So he is saying that it's because of, he has to make sure he's not breaking any laws, like Philip said. So he is outright saying that. Now, I don't know why he didn't say that earlier, but he is saying that outright now. That is a legit reason. That it makes a lot of sense. It's surprising that he's even able to release the things that he has released. To be honest, I don't really know how that works, how he gets these things. People just leak it to him. I don't know. But that is legitimate.
Pressure from inside a government to get answers from the Inspector General of the intelligence community. But as a journalist, I can put this out in good conscience and say, this is what's going on. Now, why it was unique. Well, the heat signature is unlike anything I've ever seen before, but also the people that have seen the full videos within the intelligence community, they report to me that there's no flight control surfaces. They don't know how this thing was maneuvering the way it was and just kind of rotating. It is an unknown. It's not U.S. capable. We don't know whose it is, and that is a problem.
Thanks so much for watching.
Interesting. Okay, so fascinating. What we're going to take a look at right now is, okay, so we've seen these videos. There are more videos out there, but we've seen the various ones. Now the question is, what are these things? Now there's this idea of extra-dimensional beings and the holographic principle. So let's hear that. This is a clip from the congressional hearing that was done last year. It's a very short clip. I just want to give it to you guys to refresh your memories on what David Grush said about the extra-dimensional capabilities and the holographic principle.
Ms. Luna, if is she on that list?
And it follows Mr. Grush's full interview for the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Grush, why is it that you referred to the phenomenon as non-human intelligence? Why deviate from the basis of extraterrestrial life?
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is the part on the holographic principle, but nonetheless, he's discussing why he doesn't just refer to them as bodies or aliens or whatever, which is important because he's saying that we don't know what these things are, and there's a possibility that they could be beyond the current understanding of science.
I like to leave an open mind analytically to specific origin.
When you say specific origin, are you referring, can you elaborate on that for those that might not?
If it's a traditional extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective, yeah, I just like to keep an open mind on what it could be, yeah.
Okay, and referring to your News Nation interview, you had referenced specific treaties between governments. Article 3 of the Nuclear Arms Treaty with Russia identifies UAPs. It specifically mentions them. To your knowledge, are there safety measures in place with foreign governments or other superpowers to avoid an escalatory situation in the event that a UAP malevolent event occurs?
Yeah, you're referring to actual public treaty in the UN Register. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, the Agreement on Measures to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War signed in 1971. Unclassified treaty publicly available. And if you cite the George Washington University National Security Archives, you will find the declassified in 2013 specific provisions in the specific red line flash message traffic with the specific codes pursuant to Article 3 and Article also situated.
Okay, I think he discussed here. Let's move on to this aspect of interdimensional beings.
First of its kind House hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena, whistleblower David Grush blew open a discussion about interdimensional beings, touching on holographic theory. Let's listen.
In terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring.
Only a theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
If any of that went over your head, professor of science at Harvard and author of Extraterrestrial, The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, Dr. Avi Loeb, is joining us to break this down.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at this, but one real quick thing that I want to say with regarding to the holographic principle, we'll be explaining this in a moment. So after this, we're going to take a look at the congressmen that say that this could be an extra-dimensional angel. And that is why, that's when I'm really going to get into the possibility of these beings being related to other domains, which is related to the holographic principle, but a little different. I'm going to be showing you how it's very much related to the holographic principle, but the understanding of the holographic principle as it's being discussed here is a little rudimentary. It's more advanced than what is going to be discussed here. But this is a good intro for the idea.
Welcome, Dr. Loeb.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about what he's explaining there, the holographic theory, and how that might help us understand the technology that UAPs or UFOs are using?
I don't think that's very relevant. The holographic principle is a concept considered in the context of string theory in a way of unifying quantum mechanics and gravity in the context of extra dimensions, meaning we know of 3 dimensions of space and of time. And string theory argues that in order to unify quantum mechanics and gravity.
So, yeah, okay. So let me. This requires a little bit of background. So the holographic principle, what he's talking about in relation to string theory, has to do with string theory. Says in typical dimensionality, we think of reality as being 4-dimensional, 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. In string theory, it's posited that there are 10 dimensions. In M theory, it's posited that there are 11 dimensions. I think that there's one type of string theory that has something like 21 dimensions. It gets kind of crazy. So what David Grush was referring to with the holographic principle was this idea of these beings being higher dimensional and projecting down into a lower dimensionality. When I give my opinion on this, we're going to talk about how our understanding of how reality works is related, but a bit different than this. It's not that it's coming from the way that Grush is explaining it is kind of like, oh, there is a higher dimension that is being projected down onto our lower dimension. However, in our understanding of existence, the way we understand it in the Neogenian system and meta-rationalism, the idea that we can understand metaphysics rationally, is that there are a multiplicity of different domains known as CFDs or collective frequency domains. And each one of these domains are like its own universe, so to speak. But they're not out there anywhere. They're internally projected universes, just like this whole reality is an internally projected universe, because this isn't a physical reality, it's a reality of frequencies. So when we're talking about the possible interaction of interdimensional entities, this would be the idea of one domain somehow using the properties of projection to manipulate another domain. So it's more like cross domain interaction. It's more like, it's not higher dimension being projected onto a lower dimension, but rather it is one domain interacting with another domain. And we can understand this idea, like people have this experience where, like when people do DMT, all right? Remember, don't do anything dangerous, don't do anything illegal, always be responsible. But when people do DMT, they have this experience of visiting another realm or another domain. Now, there's a big question on, is that real or is it not real? A lot of people think it's real, and it's very possible that it could be real. But you have this experience of interacting with entities in another domain. So this would be the idea that we are using our minds. Our minds are like radios tuning into different frequencies. So our minds are tuning into this particular frequency. This is why we experience the world around us right now, because our brains tune us into this particular domain. When we go to sleep and dream, our tuning function changes. When we go to sleep and dream, we're no longer tuning into this domain. We're tuning into our internal domain, our internal universe. So you can think of it like a radio, like changing the station. We need a better example, by the way, because changing a radio is so old, but it's a very good analogy. But we need one better. I think like picking different channels on YouTube or picking different I don't know. We need a better analogy. But anyway, it's a good one if you remember if people remember what radios are. So you go to sleep and dream and you tune into your own domain by shifting the station that you're tuning into, so to speak. So the idea here is that if one is, doing DMT or whatever, they are opening up the channels that they can tune to, and they're tuning into another domain. They're tuning into a domain that's not this one and not the one when they go to and sleep, but possibly another domain entirely. So the idea here is that interdimensional entities would be so to speak, manipulating the frequencies of our reality in a certain way to make changes occur. Now, the question is that possible or not? And that's a little different than the holographic principle. It still utilizes the idea of projection, but it has to do more with a projection of waveforms, which is known as a Fourier transform. So it's a projection in a little bit of a different way than what they're talking about here. So anyway, we're going to listen to what he has to say. Long story short, I just want to make it clear that what they are talking about with regard to the holographic principle and string theory is different than what we talk about with CFDs and different domains. It's related in a little bit, a little bit in that it both relies on the idea of projection, but just in a different way. The way they talk about it and use it is almost like, oh, there's only one domain and this domain has higher levels or whatever. In our conception of reality, there are many different domains. There are many different CFDs or collective frequency domains that network minds or subnetwork minds that we call subnetwork minds have created these domains. And this is what we're going to talk about on could these be extra-dimensional aliens or angels? And this would have to be with entities being subnetwork minds, highly evolved souls, highly evolved zetas, collections of them that have created their own CFDs, their own collective frequency domains, created their own worlds, so to speak, and are then interested in our world and our domain and are perhaps manipulating it in a certain way to create projections into our domain for whatever purposes they may need to have to understand us better, to transmit information, whatever it might be. We're going to discuss that. But anyway, I just want to make it clear because it can get a little confusing because what we're talking about is different than what they're talking about, but also related.
The two pillars of modern physics, they need to consider additional spatial dimensions. And then they have proven mathematically some equivalence between quantum field theory and gravity within those extra dimensions. That's, first of all, not known to be a description of reality. String theory is a purely mathematical concept at the moment. We don't know whether there are extra dimensions. Theoretical physicists talk about it for.
And by the way, I'm not familiar too much with this individual, but so far, I agree with him. String theory is not part of our system. I just want to make that clear. String theory is still a materialist idea. It gets close to the nature of reality, but I certainly don't agree with it. It gets close, but there are a lot of problems with it, specifically that it's still rooted in materialism.
Decades, but we have no clue whatsoever that there is any extra dimension beyond the three spatial dimensions we have. So mentioning that in the context of technology is completely inappropriate because we don't know whether even there are extra dimensions and whether it applies to the reality that we all share. It's just a mathematical concept at this point within string theory, which is not proven by any means to be correct. There was no experimental evidence for string theory, and we don't see any prospect for getting experimental evidence.
Oh, man. All right. So this individual is touching on a lot of very important philosophical concepts dealing with empiricism and the nature of reality and the fact that string theory is reaching a level where it's basically becoming philosophy because there is no way to experimentally verify it because you're dealing at levels of reality where it can no longer, such tiny levels, such intricate levels that it can no longer be verified experimentally because of the limitations of our technology. So it's basically philosophy at this point. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to move on to, let me see what is this individual. I haven't seen this interview yet. I want to see what he is going to say. The reason why I don't want to get too much into what he's saying is because he's bringing up basically the philosophical idea of the limitations of empiricism. And if I start talking about this, the video is going to be like 3 hours long because I'll just start talking about ontology and metaphysics and the scientific method and empiricism and the limitations and string theory. And that's not what this video is about. So let's just scrub through this real quick and see where he's going with this.
In the coming decades, for new physics in this context, the people that are talking about new physics often are not very familiar with old physics, the physics we know. just, well, maybe it's new physics, but that's not the way science is done. We need exquisite data from instruments, not from eyewitnesses. And
yeah, okay, so this individual is very much, okay, again, I don't know much about him. I'm just going off the few sentences that I'm hearing him say right now. So he, from what I gather, from what he's saying, he's a scientific empiricist. And empiricism has a lot of problems. And he's basically, so here's the idea. Oh man, I'll do this real quick and then we'll move on because I don't want to, I have many other videos on this. Okay, so our system is a meta-rationalist system. And our system says that we can understand reality through reason. It uses rationalism, okay? Rationalism is incorporated within the system. Rationalism is different from empiricism. They're actually diametrically opposed to each other. So empiricism is, a lot of people think, oh, science is all about reason. Science is actually not about reason. It's not a rationalist system. It's an empirical system. Science is all about the senses and physical data. All right. So scientific empiricism, the prevailing paradigm of science right now, is all about the senses and physical data, not about reason. They use reason, but they use reason as a tool for their empirical processes. So think of it in terms of like a religion as well. So in religion, you have people, what does religion place above all else? Faith, right? They place faith above all else, but they might use reason in service to faith to try and show that their certain ideas are true. Like they might give a rationalist argument for the existence of God, right? So they have faith, but they use reason in service to their faith. They use reason to try and support their faith-based positions. Now, of course, this is usually ridiculous. Not always, but it's usually ridiculous. But you see, there's reason being used within the system, but it's not a rationalist system. It's a faith-based system, but within the faith-based system, they might use reason from time to time in an attempt to bolster or convince people, etc. Empiricism is very similar. Scientific empiricism, science. Scientific empiricism is a system of the senses. Instead of it being about faith, it's about the senses and what you can see and test physically. Reason is used, but reason is used to prop up the empirical data, to in service to empiricism, in service to the senses. Rationalism, which is incorporated in our system of meta-rationalism, is different. We place logic and reason above everything else and use logic and reason to be able to incorporate all these elements within it. And this is very, very important to understand, because when you're dealing with the metaphysical nature of reality, you can rationally know and show that certain things do exist without physically proving it, because it's impossible to physically prove something that's non-physical. So for example, let's say that you're a character in a video game, okay? If you are a character in a video game, let's imagine you're a character in a video game. If you are a character in a video game, let's say that you're a video game scientist and you're walking around in your video game world as a video game scientist and you're examining all the pixels and everything. You will never find the code anywhere in the game. You're never going to find it. You can't take like a game rock and break it open and ones and zeros will spill out. That's not the case. That's not how it works. The code is not literally inside the game. So it's like the code is everywhere and nowhere, because the game relies on the code to run, but the code isn't literally in the game. You can't break open bricks and find the code spilling out. So if you were a empirical scientist in that video game world, you would conclude, well, there's no evidence for the code. We've looked everywhere. We can't find the code. The code doesn't exist. There's no evidence for the code. But see, now, if someone who is a meta-rationalist looks at this, you can go, yes, but we can know the code exists by using reason. We can look around and see that everything follows ordered and structured laws. Therefore, there must be some underlying structure that orders it and aligns it so that it behaves in a way that is rational and compatible with everything else, and that reality behaves in a structured way. We can rationally know that reality exists in a certain way. You can as a video game character, you can rationally deduce and figure out, hey, a code has to exist. There's no way for a code not to exist. This game wouldn't be possible, wouldn't be able to run if there was no code. So you would see a rationalist, a meta-rationalist within the game would tell the scientist in the game, hey, no, the code exists because obviously it's necessary for the game to run. And the empiricist will go, well, where's your physical evidence of the code? And then the individual, the meta-rationalist will go, well, there is no physical evidence of it because it's not physical. It's not in the game. But if you want evidence for it, it's everywhere, purely by the fact that everything follows a logically ordered structure. If everything follows a logically ordered structure, you can deduce that there must be a structuring substance behind it all. And so you can see where the empirical method is extremely flawed, because it doesn't use reason. It uses reason in service to the senses and what can be observed. So just like that, in our current reality as Neogenians, and by understanding meta-rationalism, we can go, hey, we know that this is a mathematical reality. We know that reality has to be run by a mathematical structure, because reality behaves in a logically ordered way, in a mathematical way. Nothing breaks the laws of mathematics. Everything adheres to the laws of mathematics. Nothing contradicts the laws of mathematics, and everything needs the laws of mathematics. So clearly, this is a mathematical reality, and we can understand this. Whereas an empiricist will go, well, where's your physical evidence? But there's no way to provide physical evidence of something that is non-physical. If you want the way that you can understand it exists through observation is the observation that everything behaves in a structured way. So it logically necessitates a structuring system. This is, remember when I said I don't want to make this like a 3-hour video. So I'm gonna stop here, and so we can get onto the idea of extra-dimensional alien angels and all that. I just wanted to make it clear, I don't know anything about this person, but it seems like that they are a scientific empiricist, and it's very important to understand that scientific empiricism and materialism is holding us back greatly. It's harming, just like faith harmed the world through religion and continues to harm the world through religion, and scientific empiricism is harming the world right now by keeping people rooted in the senses and only believing in what they can touch, taste, feel, and smell and do experiments on. Whereas we can know of realities beyond this one. We can know of realities beyond this one through a system of meta-rationalism, through using reason, through using logic, through being connected by intuition as well and organizing it under rationalist principles. We can know and understand that this is a mathematical reality that must operate in certain ways for it to be able to exist. So I just want to point that out. Very important to understand scientific empiricism and materialism is almost as big as, not as a big of a problem as religion, but it's very close. It's one of the three. So there are three major systems that block individuals from reaching hyper awareness, a very high form of consciousness. Okay. There are three things that block people from achieving this: religion, scientific materialism, and capitalism, rich elite billionaire class. Okay, these are the three things. Because faith-based religions keep you chained to the idea that you are subservient to a god and that you are worthless and dirty and broken and sinful, etc. It keeps you from achieving your understanding that you are actually divine. Scientific materialism and empiricism tells you you're nothing but dead, lifeless matter, destined to just rot in the grave and not exist, and that reality is material and that's it. Again, that blocks you from understanding that you are actually an eternal being, that this is a mathematical reality, and we are here to create and grow and learn together. Capitalism, unfortunately, strips everyone of their time and resources and keeps you a slave to a mind-numbing job. So you barely have time to think for yourself. You barely have time to work on yourself. You barely have time to help create a better world. It just sees you as a consumer, a soldier, a producer, a worker, all that, nothing else but that. So these are the three main, and I just want to point that out because what this individual is talking about with scientific materialism and empiricism is a very big problem. Okay, so let's move on though, because I want to discuss the idea of extra-dimensional angels. So let's bring this up here on screen. So this is an article on futurism.com that says, after classified briefing, Congressman says UFOs may be extra-dimensional angels. Okay. And then in quotes, it says, whenever I use the term angels, to me, it's synonymous with an extra-dimensional being. I'm sorry, by the way, if I've been kind of yelling a little bit. It's because I just noticed I just took these out. I couldn't hear myself very well. So I didn't realize I was talking that loud. So hopefully I'm not screaming at you all. But anyway, let's continue here. So it says, I really like this picture, by the way. It says Congressman Eric Burleson. Congressman Eric Burleson has waded into the discourse about UFOs, and in an outburst that probably says more about the state of U.S. politics than unidentified objects in the sky, speculated that they might be angels sent by God himself. It says, yes, you read that right. During a recent episode of That UFO podcast, Burleson took the UFO conversation in a wild new direction. So that's really interesting. I didn't know that there's actually a podcast. I would like to hear the clip of him. If this was I don't know if this is a video. If there's video of this, I'd love to see it, of him talking about this. But anyways, we're going to read about it here. And he says, quote, they may not fit exactly the biblical narrative, but whenever I use the term angels, to me, it's synonymous with an extra-dimensional being. So he is claiming that it's possible these things could be extra-dimensional angels, or rather that they could be angels, and by angels he means extra-dimensional being. And he says, quote, I think it's more likely that it would be something extra-dimensional than it would be within this dimension, Burleson argued. Yeah, so I agree with this. Again, we don't know what this thing could be, or all these things could be. They could be the way people typically understand aliens to be. They could be technology from a foreign government or something like that. However, I am inclined to believe, if it is real, right? If it is real, so my inclinations are either it is some sort of hyper advanced technology from a foreign government or even our government. I know a lot of people say there's no way it could be, but hey, this is all weird stuff. We don't know what's going on. So it's either that, or I think it could be some kind of interdimensional interaction. And I say interdimensional, not extra dimensional. There is a difference there, and we'll be explaining that. But I agree with Burleson at this point, in that he doesn't think it's something within this dimension. He thinks it's something else. And do I know that's true? No, but I agree with that. I'm inclined, from how I know reality works through my studies of reality and existence, it seems more likely that it would be the case that it would be not within this dimension. So he says, I think it's more likely that it would be something extra dimensional than it would be within this dimension. And then, so what I'll say is that when you start talking about things in that nature, that they're extra dimensional, well, in a lot of different scriptures, including the Bible and others, that's really the way you describe messengers of God, or, angels. End quote. Strikingly, Burleson's musings come after he attended a classified briefing about UFOs this month, though he said that nothing he'd learned there had fundamentally shifted his worldview. So he had a classified meeting about UFOs and made this statement after that meeting, but he says that meeting didn't change his worldview. Quote, there's nothing that has been said that's changed my worldview. I believe the veracity of the claims of the people who testified in the public hearing. Now, that being said, I believe that what they believe they said is true. I believe that what they believe they said is true. Not exactly sure what he means by that. I'm wondering if he means he believes that they believe what they said is true. I'm not really sure. But anyway, let's continue. It says Burleson isn't alone in musings about a connection between UFOs and religious texts. So this is a quote by Tim Burchett, another congressman. But this wasn't a recent claim. It was a claim in 2021. He said UFOs were in the Bible. Read Ezekiel. It talks about the wheels flying around. So, I mean, they've been around since we've been around, and somebody needs to come up with some answers. So, let me see if there's any more. I want to talk about this. Okay. So, these are the quotes by Burleson and Burchett about these, possibly being interdimensional entities. Now, so they're talking about Ezekiel. So if you've ever heard, the people talk about biblically accurate angels, maybe I'll do a video about biblically accurate angels at some point. If you want me to do a video on that, let me know. Leave a comment below. But anyways, if you've probably seen images of quote unquote biblically accurate angels, and people are like, oh, these are how angels really look as they're described in the Bible. That is kind of true. There's just one thing that has to be mentioned is that there are a lot of different types of angels. There are seraphim and ophanim and cherubim and archangels. And there's a lot of different kinds of angels. So the particular ones that you see depicted in images online or in memes or whatever, with all the eyes and the spinning wheels, are known as ophanim. They're a very particular type of angel. Ophanim, they're also known as the thrones because they throne the power of the Lord. And yeah, they're described as spinning wheels with eyes and things like that. But I just want to be clear, that's just one specific type of angel. Some of the memes make it sound like, oh, all angels look like this according to the Bible. That's one particular type of angel, but still very, very interesting, right? So it talks about, spinning wheels and these wheels having eyes all over them and things like this. And so basically what these congressmen are saying is if you look at stuff like this, it's possible that these are extra dimensional beings. Basically that the phenomenon that we're experiencing today could be extra dimensional beings. And what they describe as angels in the Bible and other scriptures are actually these extra dimensional beings. So whether you call them aliens or angels or extra dimensional beings, these are these particular entities, these particular things, this particular phenomenon that has been described in different ways. So the congressman's point is basically that, yes, I believe that these could be angels, but by angel, I mean extra dimensional entity, because, when you read the Bible, they're described in very interesting ways. So let's talk about this a little bit. So like I said, I would like to make the caveat that I don't see them as technically extra dimensional entities, but interdimensional entities. And of course, the difference here is extra dimensional means that they have more dimensions. They are higher, they have more dimensions and are projecting down into a lower dimension. Interdimensional means they exist in a different domain entirely and can interact and project into this one. And this would be my position due to my, years and years and years of studying hidden knowledge and esoterica and occultism and philosophy and mathematics and just pretty much devoting my life to understanding how the way the world works. Interdimensional makes much more sense than extra dimensional. Tacking on extra dimensions usually comes in when you're trying to make sense of the world in a materialist way. Right? Like if you believe that reality is matter and only matter and that's it, and you try and figure out, oh, how does reality work? You run into a lot of problems. And one way to solve that is by tacking on more dimensions. Oh, let's put in a lot more dimensions to try and figure out how existence works. But if you realize that reality isn't material, you don't have to add in all these extra dimensions, because it's kind of like our video game analogy, right? Imagine that you're in the video game and you're trying to figure out how the video game works, but you're not allowed to say that the code exists because you don't believe in the code. So you're trying to figure out how the game works. Obviously, that would be very hard to do, right? If you can't refer to the code because you don't believe the code exists, it's going to be very hard to describe how the game works. So you're going to try and figure it out. And this is similar to what scientists do, where there's a lot of problems, particularly introduced by quantum mechanics, that break the materialist empiricist model of existence. And so they're trying to figure it out. And one way they try to figure it out is by tacking on a bunch of extra dimensions, by just making things more complicated. It doesn't actually solve anything. It just moves things one layer back. Just as a quick example, because I don't want to talk about this too long, like with string theory, for example. String theory says that reality is, actually reality is composed by one-dimensional vibrating strings. Okay, so you have 1D vibrating strings, and these 1D vibrating strings are what give rise to all the different, properties of existence, all the different particles and etc. These are just strings vibrating in a certain way. So this is how they get around with trying to explain what existence is with all the extra things that quantum mechanics brings in. But the problem is, right, if you think about this for a minute, well, what are the strings made of? If you're going to say that everything is made of these one-dimensional vibrating strings, well, what are the strings? What are the string made? What are the strings made of? And of course, this can't be answered. So it's just moving the problem one step back. It's like the story of it's elephants all the way down, where someone was asked, hey, how is the Earth able to what's the Earth resting on, basically? And they go, oh, well, the Earth is resting on the back of a giant elephant. Okay, well, what's the elephant standing on? Well, it's resting on another elephant. Well, what's that elephant standing on? Well, it's elephants all the way down. So that elephant is standing on another elephant and another elephant and another elephant. Well, you're never going to get to the ground of reality if you just say it's elephants all the way down. That's where materialists have a problem. If you keep breaking things down further, from molecules to atoms to electrons and protons and neutrons and quarks to strings, it's like, okay, well then, great. Molecules are made of atoms, great. Atoms are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, great. Electrons are fundamental particles. Neutrons have quarks. What are quarks and electrons? Well, this is actually based on 1D vibrating strings. Okay, well, what are 1D vibrating strings? And then you don't have an answer there. So it's always moving the problem one step back. Anyway, long story short, I don't agree with the extra dimensional aspect, because while it is, theoretically, sure, maybe it's possible. From my understanding of existence, tacking on extra dimensions comes from a materialist understanding of reality, saying that the code of existence doesn't exist. When you understand that this is a mathematical reality, that we can understand the metaphysical aspect of existence rationally, you don't have to tack on all these extra dimensions, because you understand that, oh, things behave this way because of the underlying code. Like quantum entanglement. Two particles can interact instantaneously or communicate instantaneously. In a materialist worldview, that's a problem, because you have to have some kind of transmission from A to B. But there is no transmission from A to B. It's instant. So if you're a materialist, that's a big problem. How does that happen? There always has to be a passage or a transmission somehow. Things can't just communicate instantly. But if you realize that this is a mathematical mental reality, and this is just a projection of all that, then there's no problem, because you can have instantaneous interaction, because everything is intrinsically connected. Just like in a video game, everything is connected by the code. You can have instant communication between two parts of a video game simply by the code changing variables behind in the background. So anyway, but when you understand that reality is mental and mathematical, this gives rise to the idea of different domains of existence. And that is that minds, which are beings of mathematical frequencies, can, if they become synchronized and highly intelligent enough, and I've explained this in detail in other places. There's a lot to go through here, but it has to do with a planet synchronizing minds together and evolving past the point of needing physical avatars anymore, because a group of minds have reached such a high level of technology, and not only technology, but consciousness and synchronization and the ability to tune, that they no longer require the physical domain, because they can use their own internal frequency patterns to construct their own domain that's in parallel to this one. Doesn't exist out anywhere in space. Just like when you go to sleep and dream, your dream world doesn't, every single one of us has our own personal dimension, okay? You have a personal dimension within you all the time. When you go to sleep and dream, you tune into that dimension. It's not floating anywhere in space. You can't travel to it in a spaceship. It's within your mind, but you can tune to it like changing a radio. So same thing here, where you have a group of minds that form their own CFD or collective frequency domain, where they form their own shared domain, where you can think of it kind of like a shared dream in a certain way, a shared dream made of many highly advanced minds that no longer require the physical world to interact with. They can exist in their own domain. And so the possibility of interdimensional interaction could be one of those CFDs or domains having an interest in this domain and creating a projection through the manipulation of frequency in some capacity. The question is that possible? There's arguments for and against that, which we don't have time to go in now. But theoretically, right? There's nothing. Theoretically, it could be. It's a possibility that there could be interdimensional interaction. Because these CFDs have an interest in humanity, they have an interest in the Earth, and there's various ways that one can interact. Like, for example, you could have one of the minds of that collective, one of those soul collectives, or one of those zeta subnetworks, all right? You could have one of those minds localize on Earth within a human body, meaning incarnation. You could have a being from that domain incarnate into this domain, which is a localization process, right? Avatars are just interfaces for localizations of beings of frequency, zetas, eternal minds. So you can have a zeta if it's part of that collective, that CFD that wants to interact in this domain. One way to do that is by localization or being born. The problem with that is that the filter of the brain, of course, filters out all information regarding to their origin, because that's what the brain has evolved to do. The brain has evolved a binary tuning function only to tune into this domain and the personal dream domain, and to cut out all superfluous information that doesn't lead to the survival here on planet Earth. So one would forget what they are, basically. If you are a highly advanced mind that localizes in this domain, you can interact with this domain and influence this domain, but you will forget your origin. And so that's one way that, right, you can have interdimensional interaction, is through literally being born in this planet, right? That's one way for interdimensional interaction. The question is it possible that they could create some sort of object through the manipulation of frequencies and projection, or some other way? Is it possible that they could do this by creating these objects, and that would be an alternative way to interact in this dimension? Another possibility is that these objects could be like pseudo avatars. Instead of minds having to connect and be born into a body, right, and be born like as a human being, it's possible that these objects could serve as interfaces for a zeta. So it would be their body, so to speak, but it wouldn't really, it wouldn't be a body in the way we understand it as like organic, but it would simply be a vehicle that's in this domain that they can connect to as a soul, as a zeta, as a mind, to be able to interact in this domain, rather than having to be born and lose memory functions and all that. So that's another possibility. There's a lot of different possibilities of how this interaction could occur. But when you think about it, right, when you take a look at the descriptions in the Bible of like the visions that Ezekiel saw of the spinning wheels with many eyes and things like that. If anyone has done DMT or LSD or something like that, you've seen stuff like that. You see realms and beings with eyes everywhere that have a very similar. It's if you were trying to describe that in the time that Ezekiel was writing, that would be how you would describe it. You see very similar things to that. So yes, I think it's very, very possible that these beings are, and so that's what Ezekiel would have done, right? He would have tuned into that domain, where the same domain that people are tuning into when they do DMT or something like that. And so it would be these beings that they'd be tuning into, these beings are either projecting an object or somehow having an object be on Earth in some way that allows them to establish a Zetic link, that allows them to establish a link and interface with this world. There's a lot of open questions here. And remember, we don't know if any of this is true either. Could be hoaxes, could be, hyper advanced technology used by, foreign governments or who knows what. There's a lot of different things that we don't know for sure. But this is one possibility. And I think it's something that, should be there. There's obviously something going on here. There's obviously something. Now, what it is, we don't know, whether it's advanced technology or it is actually interdimensional entities. That remains to be seen. But my point is here, whereas I think they're touching on some very important areas where when they're talking about extra-dimensional beings, when they're talking about angels and things like that, I think that that's a very big possibility. However, like I said, I would say interdimensional, not extra-dimensional, because extra-dimensional really relies on the idea that reality is material, and we know that reality is not material. So interdimensional makes a lot more sense. These are not material beings that are somehow projecting into a lower material level. We're all beings of mind. We're all beings of frequency. And this is a manipulation of frequencies and manipulation of the properties of wave pattern interference that allows for projection. This is the holographic principle. The holographic principle, this is how holograms work. When you have a wave interference pattern, you can project an image from that wave interference pattern. So this would be the manipulation of not how they talk about like material dimensions, not material dimensions, but rather the manipulation of frequency patterns and wave interference patterns to give rise to certain projections in this domain. That is, in my opinion, much more likely based on, everything I've studied for years and years based on this stuff. The idea of extra dimensions relies on a materialist fallacy. So we really need to get away from this idea of thinking that everything is matter and everything is material. We are not. Matter doesn't exist. There is no such thing as matter. Everything is mind. Everything is mathematics. Everything is mathematical form that is expressed in a way that we can experience it, because it's not just form, but it also has a qualitative aspect to it. There's something what it is like. It's alive, basically, right? So that's the difference between a programming code and the reality we live in. A programming code is dead. It's not alive. The code that this reality runs on is a living mathematical code of frequency. It's a reality of frequency patterns. It's living. It's in motion. It's what we are. It's everything that we are. It's why we're able to have an experience right now, because we're all decoding frequencies. That's all reality is structures of frequencies that we are decoding in a certain way. When you think about light, everything that you see right now, all of the light is frequency, certain wavelengths of light, frequency. When you listen to music, that is frequency. When you even matter, when you get down to quantum mechanics and you look at the nature of matter, things are described in terms of wave functions and frequency patterns. So everything is ultimately frequency. Now, of course, the materialist would deny this, but their positions are not based on reason. Their positions are simply based in faith in the senses, which is an extremely fallacious point to be in. So anyway, very interesting ideas here. This is probably if you guys want to see more videos on this or want to see me continue to cover this, as there will probably be a lot more stuff coming out in 2024. Let me know if you want to see me continue covering this. Tell me in the comments below. But there's a lot of interesting information here. And always the main thing to be here, important thing to be here, is be open-minded, but also be skeptical. Right? We want to be skeptical. We want to use logic and reason, but we don't want to dismiss things either. We want to be open-minded. And that's what's always important when we talk about things like this, whether it's, UFOs, UAPs and aliens, extra-dimensional or interdimensional entities, or we're looking into the occult or esoterica and different ideas there. We want to be open-minded. We want to be connected to the source using our intuition, but we also want to be guided by logic and reason and not fall prey to apophenia, which a lot of New Agers and mystics and occultists do, where they're making connections that aren't actually there. We want to make sure that we are making real and true connections, because we want to understand reality as lucidly and clearly as possible so that we can create a better world for everyone and create a better world and life for us. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hey, if you enjoy my work, support over on Patreon. It's the best way to support my work. You get access to all of our members only videos. There's a lot of them, and we're having one right after this where we're talking about our future. Is it a dystopian nightmare or a utopian dream? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's members only video. So you can support on Patreon at any tier or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video to get access to all that. And as always, remember, hey, this isn't church, so don't feel obligated to support monetarily. You don't have to, but there are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking and subscribing and sharing. And I want to shout out everyone who does support. It does help out a lot, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much to Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Enki, Nuselina, Masam, Eric Fire, Christopher Smith, The Eternal Empire, and everyone else. Thank you very much.